Hi, this is Dr. W. Stephen Saunders, official psychologist of the Brett Mason Show. I do not recommend this show for audiences younger than 18 or audiences older than 18. In my professional opinion, actually, no one should ever listen to this show.
This is the Brett Mason Show. Hey, hey, hey! My name is Brett. This is my show. This is my show.
My name is Brett Mason. I am your humble host for the program today. Thanks for listening to the Brett Mason Show. I really, really appreciate it. You checking out the podcast, and especially if you're one of the folks that have shared it on Facebook or Twitter, it means the world to me. Our app for Android is out. You can get it in the Android marketplace. You can just look for the Brett Mason Show, or if you're listening on our webpage right now, or you've got here from the Facebook page, you just click through to any of the podcasts that is on my website, brett-mason.com, B-R-E-T-T dash, not D-A-S-H, but the little dash, Mason.com. Go to any of the podcast pages. You'll see links under there. You can click to go get the Android app. And you can also subscribe to the podcast or set up to be subscribed to on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn, iHeartRadio. All those are located under the player on the website. If you're not on the webpage, just click on over to brettmason.com and you can click on any podcast and it will have all those links on it. So today's show is going to be a good one. We're going to find out about people who have mental issues that are criminals, maybe how some of that's dealt with. We're going to find out if there's any devices you can buy to improve your life in terms of mental health and mental happiness, because you see those things sold. I found one the other day we're going to talk to our guest today about. And then we're also going to find out real genuine steps to finding real happiness in life. We're going to get to that all today with my special guest, Dr. W. Stephen Saunders. He's a licensed psychologist in the state of Florida. He's the founder of Central Florida Psychological Consultants and is currently practicing psychology near the Orlando metropolitan area in Claremont and Leesburg, Florida. He's a professor of psychology with the rank of lecturer at the University of Central Florida, a member of the American Psychological Association and Florida Psychological Association, member of American College of Professional Neuropsychologists and the National Academy of Neuropsychology, the president of the Central Chapter of the Florida Psychological Association in 2008, with more than 15 years experience specializing in conducting comprehensive neuropsychological evaluations, tests, and screenings. You, sir, are way too intelligent to be on this show, but I appreciate you coming on anyway. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. How are you?
I'm good. So we actually went to school together. We were band nerds together. So that's how I know Stephen, and you've done very well for yourself since leaving our humble beginnings in Holmes County, Florida.
Well, you know what, our old friend, Mr. Harvey Etheridge, who was a radio guru back in our day, we used to say, give a Holmes County and a half a chance and he'll do good, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of them have. Other ones not so much, let's just be honest, in the interest of fairness. But we won't call it.
We have a lot of success stories, though. We have a lot of success stories in our classes, and I think in coming out of that, our little hometown of Boniface. So, yeah, it's been nice.
So I have a question that I probably could have Googled and found the answer to, but I decided to just wait until you came on the show with me. Can you tell me and the listening audience, what is the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist?
Well, psychologists, which is what I am, they actually think for a living. They have to.
Okay.
They have to. Come up with novel and innovative solutions to your problems. They listen to you. They do psychotherapy, of course, counseling. They do comprehensive evaluations of all kinds. I've worked for the court. I've done a number of different things. But mostly the primary difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist is psychiatrists are medical doctors that primarily use medication and any kind of medical-based treatment to treat mental disorders. Psychologists use counseling, psychotherapy, and such, evaluations and testing and all of that to evaluate and treat mental disorders.
Well, I'll tell you, I was going to start out with you, maybe talking to you a little bit about bullying, because I think you're probably well qualified to talk about some of the aspects of that. But since you brought up the medication aspect of psychiatry versus being a psychologist, maybe I'll just jump ahead to that part of it, because these cases where, and I know the media blows it out. The media makes it look like there's mass shootings every other week, which I know just isn't the case. But it does seem like there's a few more of them recently, and it always seems like the person has been on some type of medication, and I see a lot of people blaming the medication. Can you speak to that? Can medication that's meant to help them actually cause that, or are these just people that should have been on medication and stopped?
Well, it really depends. We're really coming into an era, and a lot of the latest research that I've been reading in neurology and how medicines are working, we're coming into an era where you will be able to go to your local physician, your local doctor, and they will take a blood test and a DNA sample of you. They will take your DNA and they will map the whole thing, and they will tell you exactly what kind of medicines you might need. And you'll go to the pharmacist, and that pharmacist will manufacture with something probably like a 3D printer or some kind of pharmacological manufacturing machine will manufacture medicines made just for you. That's coming in the next 20 years, believe it or not. But we're not there yet.
Fascinating. So the issues with the brain is so specific to each person that just a general medication will never be optimum. You could actually tailor make a cocktail specifically for somebody's genetic makeup.
Yeah, absolutely. That is coming, but it's not here yet. Where we are currently is a person comes in, they tell the psychiatrist or the doctor their symptoms, and the truth is the majority of psychotropic medication, the majority of medication that's prescribed for mental illness is actually not even prescribed by psychologists. The majority, or psychiatrists, the majority of those are actually prescribed by general family physicians, by your first order doctor. Someone comes in, they complain of depression, they get Prozac or an antidepressant medicine. But not all those medicines work very effectively for every person. A lot of the medicines will work for 60%. Some of them, when you really look at the original studies, they worked only slightly better than the placebo.
Wow.
In fact, a lot of studies have shown that if you give someone a medication or what they think is a medicine and you say, this will help your feelings, they actually feel better. And what's strange is there was even a study I read recently where even when the person knows they are taking a placebo, the medicine still helped. So you almost wonder, what actually is the medicine doing? Is it simply activating our own restorative and healing abilities, or is it really doing something that is going to help people? Because so many of the medicines that they prescribe for mental illness, they only have theories as to why the medicines even work. So that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. It's not like an antibiotic where you can look under a microscope and you can see the antibiotic actually killing the bacteria. When you prescribe someone Prozac, they think that maybe it's the serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that's increasing in the system that's helping them. But what they found, the most recent studies, is that might not even be the case. What it actually may be doing is fostering this chain reaction in the brain that causes more neural connections to happen, and those extra neural connections is actually what is giving the person the subjective feeling of feeling less depressed or feeling better. So
that's fascinating. Well, I know two of the most complicated things in the world is probably space exploration and exploration of the human mind. So it's understandable that that's a technology that's always going to be advancing. But I find that interesting that you say most of these drugs are actually prescribed by a family care physician or someone that's not in your profession. And I have these questions about people who are doing things where it seems like it could have been. Maybe some of it dropped through the cracks somewhere, or somebody slipped through it. Do you think that contributes to it? That maybe people aren't being referred to somebody that could actually help them? But but you think that would make a difference if that happened more? It
can, and also it depends on how the person is presenting. sometimes a person may present with a variety of different symptoms on different days to different providers. I've seen people who have been in the system, the mental health system, for a long time, and sometimes they come with just a menu of different diagnoses. And it's not that the person they saw at the time misdiagnosed them. It's that the symptom cluster that they presented with at the time they saw that person looked like that disorder. So, for example, someone with bipolar disorder, which used to be known as manic depressive disorder, if they present at the emergency room one day severely depressed, they might get a major depressive disorder diagnosis. If they present at another hospital at another time with being very manic, then they may get their bipolar disorder. If they present so manic or so depressed that they're psychotic, they may get a schizophrenic diagnosis. And, all of those things look like what it was at the time. What you have to understand, and I think what your listeners have to understand, is the best way to diagnose anyone's mental illness is to see that person over time. The more times you see that person over time, the more accurate the diagnosis is going to be.
That makes sense. I mean, I've heard people on TV flippantly discount the treatment of some of these people who have done heinous things, or even things like suicide, not even offensive things, just taking their own life, and they've discounted their treatment. But I know when you're trying to help somebody who they either have a chemical problem or they're not thinking right or whatever it is, that's got to be the most complicated thing in the world to try to figure out. So
it can be, and an important thing to understand too is that not all people with mental illness are dangerous, and not all dangerous people are mentally ill. There is some overlap between those two, but they're not always a perfect overlap.
And that was going to be probably the final question on the subject I was going to have for you, because you see that you just keep seeing that brought up. Seems like every time there's a story that the mental health aspect of it is brought up. But are there just some people that are just evil? They don't have mental problems. They don't have a chemical imbalance. They're just bad people.
Well, I used to work in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I worked there for 7 years. That's where I actually started my career as a clinical and forensic psychologist with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And to that statement, I would have to say a resounding yes. There are certainly people that I felt on a personal level did not have a mental illness and were just, sociopaths. They were just people who had no regard for human life and no regard for anyone other than their own selfish motives. And in that regard, then, absolutely there are people like that. But there are also people who are genuinely mentally ill and genuinely commit crimes and may or may not be culpable for their actions. And sometimes just because a person is mentally ill doesn't mean they're not also responsible, because you can have a mental illness, commit a crime, and still be responsible for your actions. And
so the people who sociopaths and just people who are bad, do you think is that something that's genetic, or is that social, from surroundings, upbringing, raising, or a combination of the two, or either or?
Yeah, it's really kind of an all of the above sort of thing. The latest studies on brain structure and brain research has actually shown that people who are sociopaths actually have a genetic markers and have a different brain structure than quote unquote normal humans, or the average human being. And what it is that there is a circuit between our limbic system, which is our emotional system and how we regulate our emotions, and our cerebral cortex. And that's where all of our thinking and higher order thought takes place. In sociopaths, that circuit doesn't provide a feedback. There is no feedback between their own emotional system when they view someone else in pain. So for example, if you bite, just imagine you taking a lemon and cutting it and biting into that lemon. If you had any reaction whatsoever, even just a momentary, like, oh, that would be sour kind of reaction, you have the capacity for empathy. That circuit got weakly activated. Then, it gets strongly activated when you see someone really hurt. A hammer hit them on the hand or something else like that, you feel compassion for them. Sociopaths don't have that. Another strange thing that sociopaths do not have is the capacity to do what's known as empathic yawning. You know how someone will yawn in a room, and then you will also feel the need to yawn, and then it will be contagious.
Yeah.
Sociopaths do not empathic yawn. They don't have that capacity because that circuit that between your limbic system and your cerebral cortex is broken is connected to that empathic yawning, and they don't have that ability. So that's a quick test to find out whether or not you're in the presence of a serial killer, perhaps. Not really, but it's an interesting test. You know?
Well, it sounds humorous, but I mean, even if it works some of the time, because I know when you're like, see, I'm still single. People who date, I wonder all the time if I'm going to wind up dating a sociopath. You just don't know. I'm going to start yawning in front of them from now on to see if I can get them to yawn.
That's a good test. That's a good test.
I keep trying to move on from this subject, but you keep bringing up more things that raises more questions. So I know we only have a limited amount of time, but I'm going to continue to ask questions because it interests me, and this is my show, damn it, and I can talk about what I want. You know, if there's something that empathic connection is missing, and if that's something that you could eventually, I don't know how well you can do it now, and eventually how precise science can come with identifying that. But would it be possible at some point in the future that you could do a test on 6 months old and identify if your child is a sociopath at 6 months, and then us have a plan on what to do with all the sociopaths?
Yeah, that is actually one of the hopes. Ironically, one of the very scientists who was studying the brain structures of sociopaths was also looking, doing brain scans of regular people, quote unquote, to find controls so he can compare the two. And he did a brain scan of himself. But when he compared his own brain scan with that of the controls as in the sociopath, his own brain structure was a sociopathic brain structure. It's really fascinating.
Time to end that test.
Yeah, he completely owned it, though. He completely owned it. And he said, I've always noticed that I did not have the capacity for empathy. He said, but because I was raised in such a compassionate, caring, loving household with good, decent parents, who had firm limits and, taught him all the good things, and he went to school and he had a lot of advantages, he never became the evil sort of sociopath. He just became a person who looked at people with detachment, which in some ways you need as a social scientist. So, he was using those sociopathic abilities for good instead of for evil.
So, were you a fan of the TV series Dexter?
I love that show. I really like that show. Yeah,
that seemed like it goes right in line with what we're talking about. I mean, he was, he was one of those. He was a sociopath, and he just learned he learned how to act like he cared. So I guess that you've answered the final question I would have is if we could identify these people, that wouldn't mean we just locked them in a hole somewhere. We should come up. There should be some, hopefully one day, some set of rules and guidelines for how to raise them so they can still be productive and not serial killers. They just don't have empathy.
Well, most of the studies show that about 1 out of 25 people have that sociopathic brain structure and are sociopaths. But most of them don't go on and to commit crimes. These are the people that you meet that they will go into professions that, they will become, unscrupulous, or they will figure out how to break the rules or how to do those sorts of things and, try not to get caught or whatever else. The key for you as an individual in trying to protect yourself is just knowing how to read that and knowing when you're being taken advantage of, and to try to figure out how to stick up to your rights and be assertive. So.
That's completely. I took up way more of the show than I wanted to on that subject, but that's just so fascinating to me. I do have to take a quick break for the sponsor, but here's what you can look forward to. He's going to tell us how what we can do, things people can do to maybe be happier and lead happier lives. And then I will also question him on some miracle product I found online that promises to, and I quote, relieve depression quickly improve your mood, and restore calm. I need to know if it's as simple as buying some product off the internet. That's coming up right after the break.
This is the Brett Mason Show. Hey, hey, hey.
Let me tell you about Courtney and the folks over at the Toyota rental car program. They serve their customers by stocking the latest Toyota models, which guarantees you a superior rental experience. Plus, every Toyota model available with unlimited mileage. That's right, unlimited mileage. Rates for any of the vehicles are competitive with anything you're going to find from any other full-time rental car agency. They're just awesome. I mean, we usually get the Camry, but we've done the Avalon over there. You can get sport utility vehicles. You can get trucks. You need to take care of some business like we do when we go up to UAB. Maybe you want to just test drive a car you're thinking about buying. It's a great way to keep it for a weekend, and it's very affordable for you to do that. Hey, why don't you call over there or email my friend Courtney, tell her you heard about it on the Brett Mason Show, and say, tell me these rates or what, how I can rent a car. She'd be glad to help you. The number is 794-0741, or email her, Courtney at toyotaofdothan.com, or you can just go to toyotadothan.com and click on the rental car department and learn more.
This is the Brett Mason Show. Hey, hey, hey.
And we're back with Dr. W. Stephen Saunders. Since I went to school with you, can I just call you Stephen?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I was Stephen long before I was Dr. Saunders, and I never get hooked on titles. So, yeah, please do call me Stephen.
Coming up just a couple of seconds, I'm going to see if we can get a few tips from him on how to be happier people. I know we could all stand more. No matter how happy you are, you could always be happier. But first, I have to ask you about this device, and I sent you a link. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but it's called the Fisher-Wallace Stimulator, and it promises that you can produce serotonin in the brain, improve your mood, relieve depression, all of this for $199. This sounds like quackery to me.
Well, I have a couple of things in my office that when I have patients or clients during therapy ask me to do something that is just beyond my abilities, I pull out this wizard's hat and this magic wand, and I put it on, and I wave the magic wand around, and I said, "How do you feel now?" And believe it or not, about 50% of the time, they will say, I feel better, and they laugh. Yeah, because it's just so silly and comical. But, and I think that this device probably is about as useful as my wizard hat and a magic wand. So
I tell you, it's a brilliant idea, even if you offered because it looks like it's way overpriced. So if you figured maybe even if you could get a 20% placebo effect and you only had 80% returns, you'd still be making a killing, really.
Well, and what's fascinating, obviously we're talking about this tongue in cheek, and it's fun to laugh a little bit. But the truth is that the placebo effect really should not be discounted. I mean, the placebo effect is something really real going on there that's happening. What I would love to see more studies of is what is the placebo effect? Why does the sugar pill work? Why does it work when I wave a magic wand? Obviously, it's not magical. It's just me being silly. Or why does something work when someone believes it's going to work? Or when an expert tells them that? It's akin in a lot of ways to, in ancient times, you have the medicine man who would do, some commotions and do things for people, and they would, feel better in the tribe. Or in Bonifay terms, when I was growing up, if you were depressed, there was no psychologist or therapist anywhere within a 100-mile radius of Bonifay.
Right.
So in order to, what you did is you went to church and you got prayed through. And you had an emotional catharsis, and people normally felt better. I'm certainly not trying to sit on anyone's religious beliefs, but if you look at it, if you take the God equation out of it and anything miraculous out of it and look at it from a purely psychological point of view, what was really happening during those sorts of things? What was really happening is you had someone who was surrounded by social support. They were in a community that cared about them. They had all these people putting their hands in them and telling them that they loved them and cared about them. They were going to get better. well, then, yeah, duh, of course you're going to start feeling better on some level just from that by itself.
And you also, because I've thought about the same thing too, and you have to be really careful because people will think that you're being, off on the dark end of things, which I'm not. But also what happens, or at least in the churches I went to, which are those Pentecostal holiness churches, the people who are getting the prayer at some point, and you said, quote unquote, prayed through, in my churches usually involved a lot of loud praying and shoving people around and stuff. You also let go. At some point, you have to let go to be in that position. You can't be reserved. You can't be closed off. Yes. You have to let go to embrace that.
That's exactly right. And you have to be in the moment.
Yeah.
And, that leads into a little bit of something you were talking about before the break, which was, what is the key to happiness, or how do you find happiness? One of the ways you really find happiness, that so much of the research in positive psychology has found, is by this thing called mindfulness. And what mindfulness is staying in the present moment. Because what I have found so many times with my own patients and with myself personally, that when I'm feeling depressed, what often is happening is my mind is living in the past. I'm dwelling on the past. I'm living back there. And the past is a terribly depressing place to live.
God, it is for me.
Unless you're reliving your glory or whatever. Or if people come in and they're very anxious and they're anxiety ridden, they're typically living in the future. And when you live in the future, that's a terribly anxious place to live because it hasn't happened yet and you have no control over it. The only time and the only place you can really control in life is the here and now. And when you bring your focus and your attention to your breathing and to where you are in this moment in time, that's really where your happiness can be found. And people who are able to do that more often are shown to be happier.
It sounds like this is a happy day for me, I'll just tell you, Stephen, because you have validated a very simplistic idea that I came up with about 2 years ago when I was in the deepest, darkest depression. And I'd been there for the longest time. And one of my dearest friends, who I thought of as a sister, who had always been there and was my greatest source of talking things out. For whatever reason, that went away after 10 years. And so it was really a bad time. And I was sitting around one day trying to analyze what made people happy, because I was like, I got to get happy or something bad is going to happen. And I came up with the simplest idea ever, which is a simplistic version of what you just said. People need stuff to look forward to. And so,
right.
And so I started making a list of things that I wanted to do a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, 6 months from now. And I just started having things to look forward to. And it really did pull me out of the funk I was in. So that goes along with what you're saying. It really is. You just got to let the past go, which, God, I know that more than anybody.
Absolutely. You're on the right track, my friend.
It can't be that simple, though. I mean, I think, I think you mentioned this briefly, too. You got to appreciate. You first have to recognize, I guess, the positive things in your life before you can appreciate them. But I think a lot of times we don't do that either. Like something as simple as I'm sitting in air conditioning today. I'm not in a 150-degree house, something. You got to find the good things in life.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the reasons I hike the Appalachian Trail every year. I try to hike a little section of it every year to remind myself of my many blessings, because when you sleep on the ground for several nights in a row and you get rained on and bugs are eating you and you're having to eat dehydrated food, and you don't have running water and no shower, then you go, wow. Then when you get back home, you get in your shower, and it feels like you're in the space age. You're like, wow, this is amazing.
That's awesome, man. Look, it means more to me than you could possibly know for you being on the show with me today. I really appreciate it. And I'll tell you, I'm so fascinated by your line of work and your area of expertise. I literally could probably talk to you for 6 hours straight, and we would both wind up hating each other at the end of that. So thank God we're only doing it for 30 minutes. But I really do appreciate it. You and I think a lot alike on issues of freedom, political things, but we also have differences of opinion. But I'll tell you this, the one reason I always continue to engage with you is because no matter what your position on something, you have an intellectually well thought out reason behind it, unlike so many other people who argue with me who just recite what they heard on Fox News, which drives me crazy.
I would say the same for you. I enjoy talking and debating with you as well, and I've always found you to be a very thoughtful and insightful person, and Absolutely. I'm glad to count you as a friend, and I wish you well in all things.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to confess something to you right now as we end the show. About a year ago, somebody posted a link to test your personality or whatever. You take 15 questions, and I clicked on it from Facebook, and it said I was a sociopath at the end of the. So I'm not sure what that means, but
very interesting.
Yeah, so. I mean, I may be seeking your services at some point in the future if I...
Oh, great. Well, come on.
All right, so you can find the link to his website. It's going to be right here on the blog below this podcast. I appreciate you being on the show. Dr. W. Stephen Saunders from Central Florida. Man, thanks so much. I wish you all the best, and we'll talk to you soon, brother.
All right, bye-bye.
This is the Brett Mason Show.